Ym mis Medi, cynhaliodd cyswllt ffermio 15 o ddigwyddiadau fferm ar hyd ein ffermydd oedd yn dangos arferion rheoli tir cynaliadwy. Denodd y digwyddiadau yma dros 1,000 o fynychwyr a cawsom glywed am y prosiectau ac arferion da gan 66 o arbenigwyr yn ei maes. Lisa Roberts a dwi'n gweithio i cyswllt ffermio ac hefyd yn ffarmio adre yma ar fferm Pennant ger Llanymawddwy gyda'n nheulu, ar ffarm fynyddig Beef a Defed ac hefyd yn cynnig llety gwyliau.
Kennydd Jones yn enw i, a dwi'n darlithydd Rheolaeth Glaswelltir ym Mhrifysgol Aberystwyth ac yn bartner ar y fferm odro deuluol ger Pontsian yn Ngheredigion. Croeso i FCTV. Roedd y digwyddiadau wedi cael eu lleoli ar Rhwydwaith Ein Ffermydd gan cyswllt ffermio. Ac roedd hwn yn gyfle i raidd i ffermwyr ddod at ei gilydd i rannu arferion da pan mae'n dod at ddulliau ffermio cynaliadwy. Bod eleni wedi bod yn flwyddyn lib, mae'r hafau sych ni wedi gweld yn ystod y 5 mlynedd diwetha di arwain at Mark, Wyn a Bethan sy'n ffermio yn Teithiau ger Ffraid, ymchwilio mewn mwy i weld sut gallen nhw wella perfformiad eu glaswellt yn ystod yr hafau sych yma. Yn ystod y blynyddoedd diwetha, mae'r hafau sych di arwain at 5 mewn tyfiant glaswellt yn ystod y misoedd hynny.
Hi, I'm Bethan Griffiths and welcome to Teithiau. We just had the farm walk here. We got 520 ewes and finished about 100 cattle a year. So we've been working with Farmer Connect to look at drought-resistant mixtures because we have a lot of land here that burns off, and also trying to improve our soils, looking to the future to make the business more resilient.
Welcome everyone here to Teithiau. Thank you very much for coming. There can't have been much else on tonight with this turnout here, but yeah, no, we're very grateful for coming. Come with an open mind. We're not telling you this is how you should do it or anything like that, just this is how we do it here. So just a bit about myself quickly. I studied at the University of Reading and did agricultural business management down there for 4 years, and in the third year of that I did sales and marketing at John Deere up in Nottingham. It made me decide that I couldn't work in an office job and the corporate world was just definitely not for me, so I came home. Well, I finished university and then I did 6-7 months in New Zealand, Australia, and then I've been home since about 2017. Very lucky to have good neighbours and everyone around here who, we rely on, borrowing, always begging and borrowing kit, and they're always at the end of the phone if you need help, and very grateful to them. I've also done a few things like did the Agri Academy last year. We went to Canada, and then I'm doing NFU Next Generation and done things like Tesco Future Farmer Foundation and things like that. I find working at home, I need that thing of meeting other people, and because when you spend 80% of your day with the dogs, you need to meet people and broaden your horizons a bit.
So we'll now move on to the first project we got going here at Teithiau, so the drought-tolerant grazing lays, which ties in with numerous SLM outcomes such as maintaining and enhancing the ecosystem, reducing the farm's greenhouse gas emissions, and reducing the whole farm carbon footprint. Mark, do you want to come over, just give us a bit of background at why we decided to go on with this project?
Yeah, so you won't believe me looking at this now, but it does actually burn off here in the summer. Usually that field up there, you're pretty well onto rock, and it's red from mid-July till start of September. But yeah, very lucky the rainfall this year in some respects. It was just kind of making the most of what we got, really. It does nothing in the summer, and even if there wasn't any quality there, something was better than nothing. So it just seemed an obvious choice to try and get a drought-resistant mix there, really. We were going to do the top field up there, the one with all the bracken on, but it seemed too challenging at the start, and we dug a spade, and there was about 25 leather jackets in one spade's width, so we were like, we're not going to be able to establish anything here. It was just about trying to make the most of what we got and, get the field working for us rather than just burning off.
Just to explain a bit of what we did here. So Colin will explain the seed mixtures later on, but I'll just explain a bit of the setup of the plots. So thank you very much for allowing us to do this. We've basically got 3 different seed mixtures replicated 3 times, and then again with a mycorrhizal fungi and root growth promoting bacteria added. So we've got 18 plots in this field here, and all being monitored with those cages you can see there. So we take data such as kilogram dry matter per hectare grown, and nutritional quality data as well. Colour coded here, as you can see, treatment 1, treatment 1, treatment 1, and then so on. And then the plus means there's mycorrhizal fungi. So Colin, before we go on up, do you want to come over and say a bit about the seed mixtures?
A little bit. Thank you. For those who don't know me, my name's Colin Jones. I work out of the seed processing plant in Shrewsbury for Wednesday. I put all the grass seed mixes together. When Owen asked me to come and talk to a few farmers in a field, this is a little bit bigger than I thought. Hadn't got anything prepared, and I thought, holy moly, this is really professional, and really credit to Farming Connect and the work they do. And it's fantastic to see so many turn out here today. I first had a phone call about 12 months ago from Mark, and he just mentioned they were thinking of reseeding the hill and was wondering what species to put in there, what grew, and it was very light land. So I came and had a look, and I met with Owen, and we went up there. It's pretty steep, and it's not very friendly ground. And I thought for a minute and thought, you lads are brave. But so in the end, we put together the first mix we've got is our Imperial mix. It's the Wednesday Imperial mix. It's our best-selling long-term mix. It's full of late-heading perennial ryegrass, timothy and clover in there. And we sell about 7,000 or 8,000 acres a year of this mix. So it's a really tried and tested mix. Does what it says on the tin. But I thought it would struggle up here for sure, because when we came out and had a look, we dug these holes and saw all the leather jackets, made friends with them, and I thought this is going to be a battle here, lads. And so anyway, we tried it. We'll see how we go. We got results there. Like I say, I've put my impact and effort in this has been very small. Owen and Mark's done all the work. Although I say that, I live in the village, so I feel I've overseen this. Every morning I wake up and I look out the window and see, I hope it's there. I hope it's there. And to be honest, 12 months ago, I started praying for rain. I don't think it stopped, is it? That's the trouble, isn't it? Because the way they established it here as well wasn't my favourite way of establishing, but they did a fantastic job. I don't know who the contractor was who drilled it, but he did a terrific job. And a lot of that was down to the prep work that Mark did previous. They sprayed it off, glyphosated the lot off, and round up the whole lot of it. Cleared a lot of the dead thatch was taken out by the grass harrows, so they had a clear surface to go at. And the lad, like I say, the contractor on the drill did a fantastic job, because that seedling is the hardest way to establish any seed crop, by stitching in. Yes, it's the most economical and it can work, but the two main factors that affect it are, the one is the moisture, which we had plenty of, and seed to soil contact. Because that seedling, when it establishes, it struggles to get through that carpet of roots that's under the surface. And if it's been sprayed off as well, that root, as it decays, is sucking moisture out the ground. So that can be detrimental to the seedlings. And if you don't remove the thatch off the top as that decays, that becomes acidic, and that can affect the new seedlings that are coming through, but that's another story. So the first mix, like I say, was our best-selling long-term mix. The second was a legume and herb mix we put together, which was pretty much white and red clover and chicory and plantain. And the third one was quite a diverse mix, which is very similar to the Welsh Government Growing for the Environment mix, which had 5 grasses, 3 legumes and 3 herbs. So it was, and again, it was just a test to see which would survive and what species did well in some quite harsh conditions up there. But as Mark said, we haven't had the weather, have we? It hasn't been dry. It's been rained ever since, and it looks lush, and everything looks lush and leafy and quite well up there. So and then again, and you've done all the grafting on the samples and analysis, which you've got all the data for that. But the other thing is we used. And this is something that was new to me, mycorrhizal fungi and plant-promoting growth bacteria, which, to be honest, I think gardeners heard about this a long time before me. And I've got access to that now in a granular formula, and we can mix it in with a grass seed. Now, this is just natural occurring fungi that's readily available in the soil. We don't know how much is naturally there, but it can be killed off over a period of time from modern-day farming practices or growing certain crops. Brassicas are detrimental to the natural occurring fungi, and beet. And so a reseed following a brassica crop, which Mark has done down there, definitely needs mycorrhizal fungi. Now, what is it? It's a big word, isn't it? It sounds very technical, but it's been around since the beginning of time. And this natural occurring fungi is readily available in the soil, like I say. We add it in the grass seed mix as a granule. That will then germinate in the soil, and that fungus will penetrate the roots of the new seedlings that are growing. So it technically creates another mat of roots to survive that plant. It works in works together with the plant really and feeds off the sugars that the plant provides, and in return it provides the plant with nutrients and what we were testing here, moisture. So I've read loads about it, and the mycorrhiza increases the root development by, some say 1,000 times, but I think from 50 to 1,000. So technically you've got the plant producing its own roots. The mycorrhiza fungi, along with the rhizobacteria, which is protecting the roots, puts another form of roots out, and it just increases the root mat and for the available nutrients that are available.
So we've got a couple of examples here. So these two blocks of soil here have come from two of the plots. So the one on the right, that plot did not have any mycorrhizal fungi added at sowing, and the one on the left did. Now, what we're kind of talking to you about here is purely visual, okay? We haven't been able to analyse the results that we've collected yet to actually see whether there is a difference. But when you look visually, there does appear to be a difference between these two blocks of soil. The first indication was when we visited these plots back earlier in the year, it was probably about April time, you could see a clear difference between the two halves of the field where the mycorrhizal fungi had been used and where it hadn't. The growth was much more pronounced where it had been used. But as time went on, it seemed to even out, and it's hard to actually see it in the field now. But when you look at these two blocks of soil and look at the rooting structure, you can see that this one that has had mycorrhizal fungi, there appears to be more sort of hairy roots actually penetrating through the soil, which we thought was quite interesting to see compared to the one that hasn't. And then the one that hasn't has got much more moss, a kind of mat of moss along the surface. And what we're wondering is whether, because the plants were actually slower to establish in that half of the field, whether it's actually allowed the moss to penetrate and take hold, whereas that's not being seen where the mycorrhizal fungi is. So it's impossible for us to say at this stage whether the mycorrhizal fungi is kind of the cause and effect here, but it is interesting to just observe the two differences. It's also worth taking a look at how the chicory is really penetrating the soil here, and one in particular had a fantastically deep taproot. But you can see how that in itself could be a real aid to you if you've got slightly compacted soils. Maybe chicory and the bio sort of mechanical method that it penetrates through the soil can actually help break up. So, you know, there is a benefit to using these crops beyond just the feed value. They also have a real value to the soil structure and health below the surface.
Thank you to Farming Connect for putting on this wonderful event today. It was very educational and informal, and it's definitely given me plenty of food for thought to go home and implement some new ideas on our own farm.
Mae Rhwydwaith Ein Ffermydd yn cynnwys dros 200 o ffermydd ledled Cymru, a rheini oll yn cynnal prosiectau a digwyddiadau sy'n dangos arloesedd a technoleg o fewn ei meysydd, a hynny mwyn sicrhau ffyniant o fewn y diwydiant. Dyn ni symud i'r arfordir ar gyfer ein ail eitem, i fferm 𝗤 𝗥𝗵𝘆𝗱 yn Ngheredigion, a hynny i glywed mwy gan Francis Jones, sydd yn ffarmio yna gyda'i gŵr Deryl a'r plant.
Gwennan Evans ydw i, un o swyddogion sector llaeth ar gyfer cyswllt ffermio. Rydyn ni yma heddi ar fferm 𝗤 sydd yn rhan o un o'r ein ffermydd cyswllt ffermio. Felly bydd y cyhoedd heddi yn cael y cyfle i cael taith fferm o amgylch fferm 𝗤 a gweld fwy o beth mae Deryl a Francis yn gwneud i fod yn fwy gynaliadwy ac arloesol ar gyfer y dyfodol ac edrych ar ôl eu busnes nhw. Felly gobeithio'n Deryl a Francis yma yn Rhyd yw i wella'r fertility indicators a ffrwythlondeb y fiches yn gyfan gwbl, ac hefyd edrych ar allbaniadau y ddeiar a'r portha sydd gyda nhw yma, yn edrych ar herbal leys a clover gwyn yn bennaf.
I'm Francis Jones from 𝗤 Ceredigion. We're a mixed dairy and sheep farm. We've been involved in the Farming Connect project now, mainly to try and consolidate the business that we have. and to try and future-proof it, we've made major investments recently into slurry storage to bring us on to, up to standard there. But obviously going forward with the changeover from basic farm payments to the sustainability farming scheme, we weren't entirely sure where we stood with all the 18 universal indicators. And so we really hope from the Farming Connect project to have a better understanding of where we are going forward with the SFS.
You know, we've been talking about white clover in swards for the last 70, 80 years. Daryl, how much clover have you got on the farm? Very little. So there's tons of reasons, as Gwennon says, all right, ticking boxes. But if I go down the reasons about why we should have clover, most people go, oh, it's about the nitrogen. Okay, there is some value in nitrogen fixation from clover. For every tonne of dry matter of clover you grow, it fixes about 30 kilos of N. And most farms, if I've got a good clover sward of 30% clover, it grows 10 tonne in total, about 3 of that is clover. So effectively it fixes about 90 kilos. If you read all the literature, they talk about 150, 180. Yeah, if you live in New Zealand, you might. Fixation really only happens from May, June, July, August, peaks now in September. And it's all about the nodules on the base of the clover roots converting atmospheric nitrogen into nitrates that grow your grass. So yes, we can reduce nitrogen inputs. Daryl, you're not a high nitrogen user. You go out springtime, hit it, and then not a lot's gone on since June. So hopefully the clover's really going to drive towards June, July, August, September onwards. So we can hopefully get no nitrogen in the system at all from June onwards with a bit of luck. Tons of research that says your cows prefer to eat clover. They did a nice trial down in Northwick in Devon where they did strips of clover and strips of grass, and they put some poor student up a scaffolding tower to watch the cows for the day. And they showed a 70% preference to graze the clover. They grazed the clover in the morning, and then as the sugars grew in the grass through the afternoon, they went and switched to eating grass. Your cows like clover. First thing I did this morning, turn up, cows are in here. And I know the first thing the cows do is they go and eat all my clover, Daryl, which is why I ran round quick to get a wire. As soon as you turn your cows out, they'll come looking for clover. If you've only got 5% clover in your sward, they spend an awful lot of time looking for it and not grazing. So we need to have a certain critical mass of clover so that we maintain the intakes. So there's lots of work that talks about the benefits, yeah, nitrogen, but also more importantly, forage intake, palatability. Clover grows more in summer than grass, so we get this complementary growth curve. Tons of work looking at benefits to soil health. So I've got a lot of root mass, so it reduces bulk density for soils. The soils are more aerated. And then we can also look at the value in terms of pollinators. So you can see why Welsh Government want to encourage you to have more clover in your swards. As Gwennon says, it ticks an awful lot of boxes. Soil health, pollinators, nitrogen reduction, reducing your carbon footprint, improving forage quality, reducing purchase feed. So why wouldn't you have clover in your swards? Okay, not every field can grow clover. And when I first came here, I thought, okay, my biggest barrier to growing clover here, Daryl, is wet ground. I've dug a hole, hasn't filled up with water yet. It's a very silty soil. It's not heavy clay, it's silt, and it smears and it holds water. So if we're going to go down the idea of sorting out clover, putting clover into swards, we need to have some way of getting on top of the dock issue. Going forward, Daryl did come through here and swept round and cleaned up a lot of the docks. There's the odd one here, but hopefully we'll have a spray that might give us an opportunity to take it out without damaging the clover. I was a little bit worried about 300 sheep running around all winter in terms of what damage they can do to clover. And often it is individual grazing events that will take out clover. And I see a lot of people sneaking around. Last round of cows in November, we've got a lot of grass, let's just sneak around. And the damage that can do to your clover population, just put it under pressure. And then if you get a hard winter, then you'll lose an awful lot of that clover. So sometimes it's just little pinch points that take the whole lot out. I've got the option of direct drilling or raking. Drilling is by far my preference really for clover. We've gone a long way with the drills now. We're going to have a mooch around the back in a minute, but it's a nice tight spacing, really good bit of kit, very accurate. and we're able to adjust the depth really to a centimetre, so it's not going too deep. Timing's pretty crucial. I want soil moisture. We had a little bit of a compromise. We went a bit early. In an ideal world, I'd be going in August, September, but we went in June. So we were looking at, we still had soil moisture. We wanted a nice tight sward. We had a fairly tight sward here. We did another field that was a bit longer, but we got away with it. And then it's then about managing it. Because the problem is I've got little tiny clover plants that we drill that get easily out-competed. And most dairy farmers like to turn their cows into a cover of 3,000 and have lots of grass. And if you've got little clover plants that you've just drilled, you can't do that. So we had a little bit of the discussion about how we manage grazing. So you shorten the roundup, so we're coming in at 20 days rather than 26, 27. Lighter covers just to give the clover a bit of space. Everything you see here today pretty much is what we drilled in June. So back in June on a sunny day, we drilled white clover into 2 fields. This one as part of the grazing paddock. I'd love to have drilled the one closer so we didn't have a walk, but we were here, that's fine. And then we did a field that was in a first cut silage and then goes into the grazing round. We've done 2 clover options. So I split the field, done one variety and another variety. We've done the standard as Aber dairy clover blend, which has got some large leaf clover, some medium leaf clover, and it kind of covers a lot of scenarios. And then I've got Aber lasting, which is their new wonderful clover that is a hybrid between a Caucasian clover and a standard white clover, and it has not only stolons that go across the ground, but it also has rhizomes that go under the ground. And it's supposed to last longer. It's got a taproot. Normally when white clover germinates, it develops a taproot which lasts for about 8 months, maybe a year max, and then it breaks down and it relies on its stolons to go out and create new rooting points. Your Aber lasting has a taproot that should last 3 or 4 years. So it gives you greater drought tolerance and more persistency. And if your cows tread on your stolons and break them, then it's got the rhizomes underneath that keep it going. So the theory is it lasts longer, is more persistent. The downside is that it takes a long time to establish and develop those rhizomes. If it lives to be 2 years old, it will develop its rhizomes. So we've got to make sure we try and keep it in the system. It's more winter hardy, it's more drought tolerant. I've just done some clover counts last month, just going through and counting plants per square metre. I've got double the amount of clover here in the grey sward than I have in the silage field. It might be that the sward that we drilled into was a bit longer. The P's and K's are slightly higher in that field, so the grass is a bit more aggressive, so it might be out competing it a little bit more. But at the minute we're up to 170 plants per square metre. The trouble is if you've only got 5 or 10% clover, it is doing bugger all. It's not really contributing to the grazing sward, and it's not really fixing any much nitrogen. And plenty of people will go, well, I can't spray my docks because of me clover. And you look at it and it's 5%, and you think, just spray your docks. So if we're going to do this clover system right, we need to be where we are here, starting to get big patches where we're at 25, 30, 35, 40% clover, so that it'll actually drive the system. There's very few reasons not to grow clover. There is a risk, a potential for bloat, but it's not a reason not to grow clover. We need to decide what's limiting the clover currently on your farm. And for a lot of you, all right, it might be dot control or it might be your grazing regime. There are some situations where in a silage system, you're really going to struggle to put it in anyway and keep it. I would argue that your first priority should be your grazing ground. And then if you can get maybe some red clover in or some larger white into silage, then try it. But if you're trying it for the first time, I do on a grazing field, you're more likely to have success. The overseeding, it really is, even with all the technology in the kit, it is still a bit of a gamble. So don't go and do 80 acres in one go. Go and do a field at a time. I want a nice short sward to go into. I don't want any thatch. I want all P's and K's to be right and pHs to be right. We drill it in, and then you pray to whichever God you believe in. Okay? If you get the weather, then hopefully it'll grow. Because we're only putting it in the top ½ inch, it's really prone to drying out or getting absolutely drowned. Particularly with the drill slots, If it's dry, they open up and then the clover just dries and comes away. Or they fill up with water and your clover seed drowns. All the slugs have it. This is why we're drilling 750 plants per seed per square metre, because there's a lot against it. But more importantly to the establishment itself is then how we deal with the management over the next 3 months. Because you can drill it and go, wow, look at that, and 6 weeks later you've got lots of plants, and then 3 months later you haven't got any. Very easy to smother them out by letting covers grow strong or overgrazing. Long term, Daryl, we need to think about just nitrogen management for your high clover fields. So everything else can stay the same, but we need to adjust slightly where we got the clover. And that'll be just making sure nitrogen doesn't kill clover, it just grows grass that outcompetes it. So we need to make sure that everything tallies in to give your clover a chance. Try and avoid high covers. As soon as I get into covers above 3,000 kilos, you're putting so much pressure on your clover that it's unlikely to compete and it will get smothered out. So it might mean that we end up slightly shortening the grazing round. And weed control. Be prepared to just, like the organic boys, just look at the docks and go, oh, I'm sure there's some trace elements, and to a point, okay? So we live with some docks, don't get too fussy, but where they get a problem, hopefully we've got a spray that's going to come to the rescue. So we've done 10 acres, 15 acres, and we've got a reseed, full reseed gone, so you should have 25 acres of high clover sward.
Dros y misoedd nesaf, bydd mwy o rifynnau o'n ffermydd ar ddangos ag o ffermydd sydd wedi elwa o wasanaethau cyswllt ffermio. Felly cofiwch tanysgrifio i'n sianel a gwasgwch y glwch i gael clywed mwy am rifynnau i ddod.
Tan y tro nesaf, oddi wrtha i a Lisa, diolch am wylio a welwn i chi tro nesaf.